Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
Hi there, I'm Marty Levinson.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson, and welcome to the Northtown News Magazine.
For the identity of the real Marty Levinson, stay tuned to the Northtown News Magazine.
Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Come on, baby, don't you wanna go? Back to that lemon light city, sweet home Chicago. 224 446. Come on, baby, now get your business fixed. Come on.
Hi, I'm Marty Levinson. Welcome to the Northtown News Magazine show with the greatest cameraman around, Sonny Hirsch, and your host, Avi Myers.
Thank you, Marty. Avi Myers, Northtown Neighborhood News Magazine, a presentation of Sonny Hirsch and myself. Dial us up on the web at www.ntnm.org. We're real big on community policing, and stick around for this segment if you're into finding out into community policing or the police also. Sonny Hirsch is the chairman of the District Advisory Committee of the 24th District in his spare time. Website caps24.org. You'll find a lot of the meetings for the 24th District. Not everybody submitted their things of late because the schedule has changed during the course of the year. You can also take a look for it. You can also find places where you can report graffiti. You can see where the sex offenders are, which may not be the most pleasant project. See who just got arrested. And matter of fact, somebody from my old home block of 7700 South Essex got arrested for prostitution not far from here. What a nice block that turned into. Anyway, well, at least it's not, there's also been a half a dozen murders from that block, both received in, shot at and shooting. Anyway, it is a pleasure to introduce you to the former Deputy Chief of Police of the City of Chicago, as well as the commander of the 24th District, and I actually originally met him when he was a community policing sergeant in the district, and that is Deputy Chief Bruce Rottner. How you doing?
Great, Avi. How are you?
First of all, thank you for coming.
My pleasure.
It's harder than ever these days to try to actually get a police officer to come on the show, or actually anybody from the city to come on the show. There's a whole different culture these days over there. But you know what? The first thing I want to talk about is National Night Out, because It's coming up, and that's something you certainly worked with on a number of occasions, are very familiar with. So tell us a little bit about National Night Out and what it is.
Well, National Night Out, Avi, is something that really started back in the 80s. I don't know specifically. Actually, before I came here, I was going to do a little research on it, and I didn't. But
actually, I checked their website. It's about 27 years old.
Okay, then you did a better job than I did. But it was actually, the idea initially was that people on a specific night, which is always the first Tuesday in August now, would just go out on their porches and turn their lights on in a symbolic anti-crime type of initiative. And that's what happened. And you would see all these, small towns with their lights on. The idea caught on nationally, where whole blocks would have their lights on. And, it evolved, it progressed, as you well know. Up here in the 24th District, initially each beat did a small project. 2422 had something at the park. I know 2411 would have something at McDonald's. 2412, all the beats had something. And, and it's really great to see that even now in 2012, they still do, because, community policing, and I'm sure we'll touch upon this in a few minutes, was really a 90s and early 2000s initiative. In some places, it's fallen by the wayside because other initiatives have taken over. But it's really...
Or budget problems. I happen to be stuck in Cleveland, and actually, cop asked me if he could help me. Did I know where I was going? And I was just waiting for the bus got delayed.
Sure.
And we started talking, and he was involved in community policing there, and their budget went kaflooey like ours did.
And that's usually the first thing to go are those type of initiatives, community policing, those type of things, But I think we laid a pretty strong foundation here in 24 when CAP started. And that's why it's still progressing today.
And that's in large part thanks to you. And also, we were one of the we were one of the very first people to have community policing as a pilot project.
Yeah, we really were, and you know, everybody contributed, and really the guy who really, you know, got the ball rolling up here, of course, was Tom Byrne, who's currently Commissioner of Streets and Sanitation.
And a great guy.
Yeah, and you know, you can't talk about community policing initiatives without talking about Tommy Byrne. You know,
Our national awards actually came with him. It was his ideas of, and probably yours too, because I know you guys always would talk about things. But it's like where you guys sent us to that won us our national awards in the 90s.
Yeah. So, like I say, you know, it would be unfair to really talk about, you know, the successes without talking about Tom Byrne and everything that Tom did initially when he was here in the early 90s. But be that as it may, you know, being a prototype district, which we were one of the 5 prototype districts, really gave us a head start, you know, on this initiative. And the results are you know, are still out in terms of what impact did community policing have, does it have. But the good thing is things like National Night Out are still going very strong. And, you know, I no longer live in the city. I live right next door in Lincolnwood now. But I keep my finger in the pie, so to speak, and know what's going on in Rogers Park, West Rogers Park, Edgewater. And the spirit of community policing, as evidenced by National Night Out, still extremely strong up here, where in other communities it's not quite as bright.
No, there's no question. And it is strong here, and people really look forward to it. I mean, last year we had Target, you know, coming in with us, and this year we've got like $110 from Target. We had 2 different individuals through Zamsoap, Zara Quadri's charity kick in $200, and we never spend hardly anything anyway. So I guess we'll have a lot of pizza later in the year, or maybe get some raffle tickets. Or the reason I was looking at the National Night Out site is I wanted to see if they had any like knickknacks or doodads that weren't terribly expensive.
Sure.
So we could do T-shirts for about $7 each, I think.
Yeah, but you're right. I mean, you know, today's, you know, economy has really, in some ways, hurt, you know, initiatives. I mean, unfortunately, you know, everything costs money. People are very innovative, very creative. They come up with different strategies to offset the fact that the money's not there anymore. And you know, as a police department, we really appreciate it when people would do things like that. Sometimes you have to pinch yourself and remind yourself that these are volunteers. I mean, they're getting absolutely nothing. You know, one may say, well, yeah, but they live there. Well, you know what? The fact is, most people work all day, they work 10, 12 hours a day, they go home, turn on TV, they're tired, you know. So people like you, like Sonny, that you know, do get involved in this. You know, it's just, sometimes it just blew my mind. Even as I progressed in my police career, you know, you say to yourself, what are these people doing this for, you know? Well, it's to make where they live, their home, just a little bit better for everybody.
You know, it makes a difference, I got to tell you. You know, at one of the meetings, there was somebody who was having problems in a certain part. Well, just so people know, my beat is Devon to Pratt and Kedzie to Ridge. So there was a very organized block club on the 6600 block of Artesian where the Latin Kings started to enter the picture. And Nancy and Madeline from the block, Nancy Maloney and Madeline, I never did know how to pronounce that last name, like Keatis or something like that, were very active, energized the whole neighborhood. We actually had something like 40 or 50 or 60 people marching last year, and there were maybe 80 or 90 or 100 people that actually showed up, and even more that participated without moving anywhere. But they really energized people, and somebody got up from a different area that was having problems and said, did you really make a difference? And they were scratching their head, and they started saying things like, well, you know, like the neighborhood got together, we know our neighbors better, there are good things that happen from it. But you know what, it's more than that, because you don't have to go far from here. I don't have a car, so I use things like Zipcar, and the closest Zipcar is at a I think it's Kilmer School around Pratt and Ashland, which has been a trouble area. So if I take the Lunt bus and walk the 2 blocks from Morse to Pratt, I get to see who's selling drugs on the corner in midday, because those guys are out there on the street, and there is a real gang presence there, and they've got lookouts and everything. At least in this neighborhood, you don't have anybody standing on the corner quite that boldly.
But, you know, if you take that a step further,
Sure.
you know, you look at that beat over there, which is 2431, and that's Kevin O'Neill, who's been a longtime beat facilitator. imagine if Kevin and his group hadn't been involved in community policing, what they would have looked like.
Even worse.
There.
See, and by the way, I'm not disparaging.
No, I know you're not. I know you're not. All I'm saying is, we never know. People talk about just in a different context about Jim Fix, the runner, the young man, unfortunately died very young.
I remember him.
And, a guy who smokes 3 packs a day and drinks, 3 bottles, says, well, look at this guy died when he was 32 and he was a runner and this and that. Well, maybe he would have died at 22 had he not done that.
True.
The whole point is that, community policing has impacted this district. And
tremendously.
I can only speak for this district. Yeah. Do they have problems around that school? Absolutely, But imagine had there not been a community-based effort that Kevin or you or on 2411 or on 2422 had put forth. Imagine what this community would have looked like.
No, there's no question. It's better. It's definitely better. It's better than it was for sure. And I tell you, around the Morrisell, it's like, like I was actually telling, like I would go there because I use the L myself, and I was telling people that if they were a little bit shy, maybe they should just go to the Loyola L or someplace different. But it's a whole lot cleaner. There's no question that both Kevin and Jane, and by the way, one thing you don't know is they actually retired at this point.
Oh, really?
Kevin and Jane, which they're sorely missed, but and they're still involved. It's not that they're not involved.
Sure, I'm sure those people always
but
would be
basically,
involved.
there was a problem last year. The meetings times changed drastically, and actually the meetings came when they were working.
Sure.
So it's unfortunate, and it's back to normal.
But
now.
the big picture is there was never a shortage in the 24th district of people to step up to the plate for these things.
Yeah, and by the way, those are some of the oldest, most active, and those people really made a difference. And
sure.
It's what people don't see are things like stopping the extra liquor license or knowing what kind of suspicious activities taking place
Absolutely.
in a certain place. Now let me ask you this, because you were saying earlier, and I know you're right, that one of the first things police the city looks to cut when there's problems is community policing. But isn't there enough information going back and forth that makes it worthwhile?
Well, police over the years have gone into a number of different strategies. Going all the way back to when O.W. Wilson, who himself was a Berkeley, California police officer. Yeah. And he studied under Vollmer, who was, the guru of policing back. O.W.'s initiative back then was put policemen in cars, have them respond to jobs, be in essence reactive rather than proactive. And then they found out that really didn't work. Back then it was unheard of to put policemen in cars and mobile. Everybody walked back then. Yeah. But as we said, they lost touch with the community by doing that.
That's a problem.
And it was actually designed to be random, the type of patrol. No one ever knew where you were going to be, and this, that, and the other. And that kind of worked in the 60s because of the turbulence of the times and so on and so forth. Would it work today? Absolutely not. Community policing was something that was probably really needed back in the 90s and the early 2000s because we had really lost touch with the communities that we served. I think, again, that the economics of the situation, you devoted a lot of people to police officers to community policing. Are they better served out being in a street capacity? In some areas, yes. But be that as it may, I think because the foundation was very strong that was laid, community policing just doesn't die. It just won't go away and say, well, we tried that, we're not going to do it anymore, let's do this. I don't think community policing in some form will ever go away. But, as a manager of a city, in this case being the mayor, has to make some tough choices. And a superintendent, in this case Gary McCarthy, had to make some tough choices. And, unfortunately, taking officers from the community relations office and putting them back on the street were some of those choices, But the fact is that you still meet with the beat officers, the officers who deliver the services to you, And if they wanted to pull the plug on that, they would have, but they didn't. So they're still supportive of that.
No, there's no question. And by the way, in the 24th district, things are really strong. Every single beat's going to be meeting, at least 10 times this year.
Sure.
And I want
And
to thank,
let me just tell you, that doesn't happen in every district.
That I know. As a matter of fact, you know what? I know from, trying to think of her name, she is a judge-elect. She was in charge in 23, and she was involved in 19.
Diane Marshall?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, quarterly meetings for the entire area.
Right. And even when I was still working as a commander up here, there were some districts that had quarterly meetings, That doesn't mean they weren't committed. It's just the way they did things there, and that's how it worked there. So
yeah, at one time we used to have when I first started, it was a quarterly meeting. It was Donnie Holman,
right,
Lieutenant Holman, who got us to do the monthly, and I really was a little resentful at first, but it really worked out much better. But I just want to say on the air, I want to thank Commander Roussel and Sergeant Kane, who he told me that you're responsible for him being around. He really gives you a lot of credit.
He's a good man.
He is a very good man.
He's a good man.
And, see, everybody still says nice things about him. And Zelidith Moore and whoever and we want to say goodbye to Carrie, who's now back on the street.
Yes.
She's got a kid, and Carrie Matthews. So she's got a kid, and she needs a more regular schedule than community policing provides. But she's been great to work with, and we want to thank her very much. And good luck to whoever the third person is. But, yeah, we still meet with Miff at the last meeting. Sonny and I now have a combined meeting because our concerns, there's a limit to how many they can have. Sure. So Sonny and I share Devon Avenue. His beat is Devon to Peterson and Kedzie to Ridge. Right. So we had about 45. We were at Zam's Hope last time. We had about 45 people at the meeting.
That's terrific.
And we had about 40 the meeting before, so it was very encouraging. And we've got not just a lot of people volunteering for National Night, but $310. Maybe I'll go to Argentina with the money afterwards. But you know what? I want to talk to you about, you were mentioning before about Superintendent Wilson, and I do remember that. I was a little kid, but I was a news junkie even when I was 6, 7 years old. When Commander Klein, and I understood why he had to step down, it was a political thing, it was looks.
Superintendent Klein.
Superintendent Klein, I'm sorry. But you know what? I really loved the way that, I guess that to me was like the heyday of the department when I thought everything was clicking on all cylinders. And you know what? Each beat had an individual sergeant, which was great. I want to tell you, like we had a Rob Kalani who grew to become a lieutenant.
Correct.
Such a personable guy.
Sure.
Really took an interest in the beat individually. Then we got Sean Rellinger, who night and day is a very different personality. But he learned to become more personable and deal with things.
Of course.
And also he took the responsibility so seriously that he knew every single detail about what went on in 2412. Kane's doing his best to do a good job. He's brand new. But there's no way he can know all the individual problems of the 9 individual beats.
Of course not.
But you know what? It's also a manpower thing, and I'm grateful it's still around. But things basically started changing. When Jody Weiss came in, he had a whole different philosophy.
Sure.
And I actually tried talking to him and getting him on the show. And he actually told me, here's my thing, here's who you contact, all the rest of it. And I did it on a number of occasions. And I was told the only answer I ever got back is when I actually emailed him, got him at like 5:40 in the morning one time. He said, no, you got to call this person, not this.
Yeah, well, I mean, the big difference, the obvious difference is, Phil Klein, who promoted me to commander, was a Chicago policeman, for 30 some odd years.
Yeah.
Not every officer loved Phil Klein, obviously. Phil spent most of his career in narcotics, in the detective division, and so on and so forth. But be that as it may, he was still a Chicago policeman, so he was accepted as a Chicago policeman. Jody Weiss, of course, although he came from a law enforcement background in the FBI, was not a Chicago policeman. He wasn't from our culture. And, that immediately put a black eye on Jody Weiss. That put a target on him. Now, you have to understand, it's like a guy working in the plant at General Motors. What the president or the chairman of the board does doesn't necessarily impact him immediately. So he's not thinking about the chairman of the board. It's the same thing out here. The guys on the street, working the street, the men, the women, what the superintendent does, unless they make some huge policy change, which will impact them, really don't think about them. They could wipe out the whole command staff and our officers That's how much faith I had in our officers. Will continue to go on and on and on and on. I mean, the real keen relationship on the street is that between the patrol officer and his or her supervisors, sergeants. The sergeants are the main managers on the street. How they direct the troops, how they manage the people out there is really the key relationship. I mean, as commander, I can tell them whatever I want at roll call. But then when they go out there, I'm not driving around all night. It's a sergeant who's making sure that the things we need accomplished get accomplished. A good sergeant, like Sergeant Rellinger or now Lieutenant Kalani, made sure those things were done. Unfortunately, not all our sergeants were 500 hitters. And some,
well, I also want to include Donnie Holman in that too, because we had him for. I like to think that I always break in good sergeants who become lieutenants, and
Donnie was and remains and continues to be one of the best.
He really is.
But again, we're a big organization. The time I was there were over 1,200 sergeants. I don't know what they're down to now, citywide. But again, they're not all 500 hitters. Some guys just don't have the same work ethic as other sergeants, and you just hoped and prayed that you got good sergeants in the district. But they're the ones that really made this. They're the frontline supervisors.
Interesting.
Yeah. So
I never thought of it that way.
Yeah. They really, and a lot has changed. I mean, I've been gone a year this past Sunday, which was July 16th, 15th, I should say. Yeah. And a lot of things have changed in the year I've been gone. Again, I keep my finger in it. I have a lot of friends who are still active. I know what's going on. But be that as it may, the changes just in the year have been unbelievable,
Yeah, no, I believe it, and I mean, I hear things. I don't necessarily, I don't bring up hearsay and things like that. I know that, Oh, so you know what? What are you doing now? Are you retired, or are you actually?
I'm retired. Well, I spend a lot of time at Home Depot and Lowe's and Menards. Being a happy homeowner. And actually, again, as I mentioned before,
I love Menards, by the way.
Yeah, so do I. I moved to Lincolnwood. I have a home there, and really, just doing that, playing golf. I am starting in August to teach at the Chicago City Colleges.
I actually went to Mayfair when there used to be a Mayfair.
Did you? Yeah, I remember Mayfair.
I was editor of the paper there, as a matter of fact.
And
by the way, the president of my student senate was Mel Reynolds, if you remember him.
I do remember. He's a Mather High School graduate.
Exactly.
Right, yeah. It's 1969. I'll be teaching police management there. I'll be teaching at Harold Washington College downtown.
Oh, very nice.
So I'll be doing that. I've got a few other things going, which, right now I'm waiting to see if they come to fruition. But I've been keeping busy. I mean, and those who have retired, will tell you this, that when you leave something that you've done for a long time, and I did that for almost 40 years, it's not the circus you miss, it's the clowns, But I had to go to the 24th District, and I try not to go to police day. I don't hang around police stations or anything like that, yeah. But I had to go there and see, actually, Lieutenant Holman about an issue that he had asked me about. And, it's great seeing the officers you worked with, and especially on days, because most of them, if I went there on afternoons or midnights, probably half the people I wouldn't recognize because I've gotten new people in there. But you
the
see
day people have seniority, so
yeah, of course. But you see those people and stuff like that. My friends are still my friends. In fact, I was just Monday night with Steve Cohn and Hank Jacob.
Hi, Steve. Hi, Hank.
Who retired. We had a guys' night out, and I see some of my old staff. We get together. So it's great, but I don't sit around and watch Jerry Springer. I don't do any of that stuff. I have something to do every day, a project, and like I say, once I start teaching, I'll be busy with that, and we'll see what happens.
Let me ask you, what do you think of the police have a mandatory retirement age of 63?
Yes,
I believe
that's correct.
Is that something you think is a good idea? Should it be extended, or?
I see both sides of the coin on that. I retired 4 months before my 63rd birthday, and that was a conscious decision. I didn't want the impression to be that they were dragging me out screaming and kicking. I understand that, but the other side of the coin is, you know, on the street, you know, I was very fortunate to have been promoted.
Yeah.
You know, only 10% of us ever get promoted. But the normal police officer is going to remain a patrolman. It's sad to say,
Yeah.
but that's what happens in a big police department. And you know, running around working shifts, is really no place for a 63-year-old to be. I mean,
Yeah.
it's while we you know, in some cases it can be a physical job. You know, you see police officers who have heart attacks. Well, that's because a lot of times, you know, there's times when it's not physical. Especially up here in North, where we're not quite as busy as it is on the west and south side. It's not uncommon to spend like 3 or 4 hours of your tour actually in the car driving around.
Yeah.
Then you're stopping and having lunch, you're having dinner and stuff. And all of a sudden you have to run out and run them half a block or a block. If you're not in halfway decent shape, there could be a problem. It could be a problem for someone 35. Now someone 55, you know, it could be a real problem. So, you know, in that sense, I'm glad they make a mandatory retirement because I think, you know, you're probably saving the lives of some people who would stay till they're 70 and, you know, they find them, you know, dead in a locker room or something like that. I mean, I don't know. But on the other side of the coin, you have to be prepared for retirement. Now, a lot of us say, you know, I could have been a contributor until I was 67 or 68, you know, and I know I could have been, you know. But this put me in a position where I had to do something else, and I'm going to be doing something that I always wanted to do, which was teach.
Oh, cool.
So, you know, in that sense, it was good. I understand economically, though, you know, that, you know, they're talking about raising the mandatory retirement age to 67 or 68. I know in the suburbs, in the suburban police departments, a lot of them, they push you out when you're 50. Now, it's not mandatory. But they figure someone over 50 is going to start having medical problems, things which their insurance is going to have to pay for. So, you know, I have friends of mine that, you know, left Chicago, went to the suburbs, and, you know, attained rank, sergeant, lieutenant. And at 50, they started pushing them out, you know.
Wow.
So you know, it all depends on the economics. It depends on the administration and so on and so forth. But today, you know, it's like it always has been. It's the money. It's the dollars. You know?
Yeah, it's, you know, in forcing the early retirement, you mentioned Steve and Hank. I miss those guys. I really do. I still talk to Steve once in a while. You haven't returned my last 2 calls, Steve. But
I'll tell him.
Oh, thank you. And his wife did friend me on Facebook recently, which is very nice of her.
That's good. That's great.
So I kept thinking I was asking Steve too many police questions that he didn't really want to deal with anymore in retirement. So I apologize, Steve. And I still send him all my jokes. And hey, you owe me a joke or two, Steve.
Oh, the other big thing I did, Avi, I quit smoking. So.
Oh, mazel tov.
Yes, thank you. I've gained a little weight, and I know the camera puts an extra 10 pounds on you.
And an extra 30 pounds.
Yeah. I'm really not this heavy. I really am not this heavy. But, yeah, but I did quit smoking. You know, and it's funny how, you know, I used to get headaches. I used to get heartburn. I'd smoke a pack of cigarettes a day. Once I retired, you know, no more headaches, no more heartburn, and you know, it took me a little longer to quit smoking, but you know, but I did do it.
Interesting.
So,
you're the only other person I've really talked about how we felt healthier from retiring was Bernie Stone.
I haven't seen Bernie in a while, but you know,
he sends regards. He was here earlier today.
I know. Yeah, I mean, you don't realize how much pressure that you're really under until there's no more pressure. You know.
Yeah, because you really had a round-the-clock job, to put it mildly.
It was, and I loved it. But you know, again, you know, you have to move on. You can't hold on to the past. So.
Well, at this point, Mickey's hands say, "Thank you,
Avi,
Deputy
thank
Chief."
you. You're all choked up over this. So,
definitely. And National Night Out, Tuesday, August 7th, caps24.org. Thank you, Sonny Hirsch. Entire technical crew. I want to thank Deputy Chief Bruce Rottner. We're so glad because we had, you know, we got somebody who really knows what he's talking about the police. That's something that we try to be very friendly. We understand what a good job the police are doing, and a lot of you should too. And you should attend your community policing meetings if they're still there in your neighborhood, because it's a lot nicer working with them than the other way around.
Right.
So at this point, thank you very much. Thank you, Bruce. Thank you, Sonny. And have a good day, everybody. Bye-bye.